My name is Susan Miller, and I'm 36 years old. I own a small vintage shop in the cozy town of Willow Creek, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains. To most people, my life seems simple. I wear comfy sweaters, drive an old truck, and spend my days dusting things others might call junk. But to my family, I'm the one who didn't quite make it. I'm single, no kids, no big career, and definitely no fancy degree to show off at our yearly holiday dinners. My dad, Mr. David, used to be a bank manager. He believed that how good your credit was mattered just as much as how good you were as a person. My mom, Mrs. Emily, was a school principal. She thought every child could do well if they picked the right school, the right job, and married the right person. Their perfect child, my sister Beth, was their shining example. Beth graduated from a top university, became a successful architect in a big city, married a kind doctor, and had 2 kids who started playing tennis at age 7. Their holiday cards looked like they were from a magazine, with matching outfits and big smiles. And then there was me. I chose to study art history at a local college. While Beth was designing buildings, I was in libraries, reading old books and admiring old furniture. Art is nice, my mom once said, but it doesn't pay the bills. I still remember how her hand shook slightly when she folded my college application, clearly disappointed. After college, I worked for 3 years as an assistant at an auction house. I quietly learned how to tell real wood from fake, how to spot signs of old age, and how to know if a lamp was from the 1920s or the 1950s. I remember coming home excited about a piece I found that was worth much more than its price. My dad just mumbled, "Sounds risky." When I was 28, I used all my savings, borrowed a little money from a friend, and rented a small brick shop under the old oak trees on Maple Street. I named it Timeless Treasures and showed off each old chair like it was a special piece of history. On opening day, my mom brought a fake flower bouquet. She looked around and, whispered, said to her best friend, "Hopefully she'll get over this before she turns 30. From then on, I was just a background character at family gatherings. Every holiday was like a play, with Beth as the star, the brilliant architect, the loving mom, the perfect wife. Meanwhile, I'd get asked, "Is your shop still open? Have you thought about teaching?" Once, I heard my dad tell my uncle, "At least she's not asking for money." What they didn't know was that every piece I sold was a memory brought back to life. An old silver tea set, worth over $2,000, kept me up all night, scared I'd priced it wrong. A 19th century music box I sold to a customer made her cry when it played the song her mother used to hum in 1945. They only saw dust. They never saw the stories. But the hardest part wasn't their dismissal. It was the constant feeling that I was never good enough. No matter how hard I tried, I was still Susan, the different daughter, without a fancy degree or awards for my mom to brag about at her book club. And I accepted that quiet role. At least there, I was left alone. I never told anyone, not even my closest friend, that one of the first things I sold at Timeless Treasures opened up a whole new world for me. It was an old French clock, buried in a dusty shed outside Willow Creek. The owner just wanted to clear out junk, and I bought it for $30, along with a doubtful look from him. After a week of carefully cleaning off mold, oiling its parts, and looking up its hidden marks, I found out it was a rare clock made for a French general long ago. 3 months later, that clock sold at an auction in New York for $48,000. I didn't spend a single penny of it. I opened a private investment account and kept my business money separate from my personal money. From that moment, I realized my passion wasn't just about feelings. It was a smart way to create value. I didn't need my family's approval. I needed time, patience, and the ability to see what others missed. I started waking up early on weekends to go to estate sales, especially in old homes along the coast. I found that many rich families didn't have anyone who knew how to properly value old items when they were moving or selling things. With a notebook and a special scanner, I taught myself to tell real old furniture from fake copies. I learned to spot real old carvings versus cheap ones from the 1970s. One of my best finds happened in a small town nearby. An elderly couple was selling their late father's library. He had been a retired college professor. Among thousands of books, I found a rare old print, an original from 1837, with notes from a British historian. I paid $125 for the whole box of books. 6 months later, after checking its authenticity, the print sold to a museum for $210,000.
Big sales like that don't happen every day, but even a few each year, combined with smaller, steady sales, were enough to grow my investments. I didn't keep anything under my real name. I started a company called Hidden Gems Holdings, hired a private financial advisor, and slowly bought the building where my shop was located. Not just the shop, but the 3 apartments above it, an office next door, and even the parking lot behind. Everything was under the company's name. No one in my family knew. They still thought I was just getting by, barely making ends meet, or keeping the shop open for fun. And I let them believe it. I lived simply, not because I had to, but because I chose to. Most of my clothes were old but well-made pieces. Some I got for $20 at flea markets, but they were made from fine fabrics from a century ago. My truck was old, but I took good care of it, and it was full of memories. I didn't drink expensive wine, but I did own a set of beautiful old crystal glasses I bought cheap from a pawn shop that had no idea what they were selling. Every year, I traveled to Europe once, usually in the fall. Officially, it was for buying trips, but really, it was to spend a few weeks in the museums of Paris or Rome, reading old books in the hidden shops of small towns, and walking through rainy streets just to watch the lights shimmer on the wet ground. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I arrived at my mom's house around noon on Thanksgiving, carrying a homemade pumpkin pie and a set of old crystal glasses I had just polished. Every year, I brought Beth a small gift with historical value. And every year, she would put it aside without a second glance, then start talking about her latest project or upcoming family vacation. My mom's home in Oakwood hadn't changed. A perfectly neat garden, rooms decorated like they were from a fancy magazine, the smell of butter and cinnamon filled the kitchen. Beth had arrived early. Her shiny black SUV filled the whole driveway. I parked down the street where the leaves hadn't been raked. "Well, look who's here," Beth smirked as I walked in. "Good thing you didn't keep the shop open today, huh, Susan?" I smiled and said nothing. I had left my new assistant in charge, but Beth wouldn't understand the idea of letting someone else do the work. To her, if you weren't working 8 hours a day, you weren't really working. We helped Mom set the table. She handed me a bag of raw potatoes. "Can you peel these, sweetie? Your sister's handling the fancy dishes." I sat at the kitchen table, quietly doing my part, just like every year. My dad walked in with a drink in hand, greeted Beth with a big smile, and gave me a nod, barely looking my way. "How's the store, Susan? Still open?" "Same as always, Dad," I replied calmly. "Had some interesting pieces last month." He said this without really listening, already focused on Beth, who was in the middle of a story about a huge legal case. I heard words like contract, company problems, and board meeting. Mom spooned out gravy, nodding proudly. Around 3 p.m., we all sat at the table. The chandelier gave off a warm golden light, and the smell of roast turkey, cranberry sauce, and bread filled the room. Everything seemed to be going just like every other year, until Beth said, "Where's my phone? It must have died." I looked up. My phone was on the kitchen counter, where I'd left it while washing fruit. Before I could react, Beth grabbed it, swiped the screen, and scrolled through my messages. Seconds later, her face turned pale. Her voice cut through the cozy air. "What the hell is this, Susan?" Everyone went silent. She held my phone up in the middle of the table. The screen was still lit. A message from Mr. Thomas, my financial advisor, was visible. "Congratulations, your net worth just hit $15.2 million. See you next week to discuss the new investment." My dad put his drink down so hard it splashed. My mom's mouth dropped open. Beth stared at me like I'd committed a crime, gripping my phone like it was evidence. "You've got to be kidding me," she snorts, growled. $15 million? You? That tiny antique shop of yours made all that? I stood up and held out my hand. "Give me my phone, Beth." She pulled back, her eyes full of doubt and anger. "No, you need to explain. Where did that money come from? Are you involved in something illegal? Secret deals? Dirty money? Because if you are, you're bringing the whole family into it.
Nothing illegal, I replied calmly. More than I expected. That money is mine. Every cent came from the work you always called playing with old junk. My dad cut in, his voice shaky. Is this real, Susan? You really have $15 million? I nodded. The whole room froze. One moment we were saying thanks for Thanksgiving. The next, I felt like I was on trial in a family courtroom. Beth exclaimed like she'd caught a traitor. All these years you let everyone think you were broke. Had Mom worried about your retirement? Had Dad constantly asking if you needed a teaching job? Meanwhile, you've been sitting on a fortune like some silent queen, saying nothing. My mother, whispered to herself, confused. She goes to the grocery store in old sweaters, gives the kids used books, uses a cracked phone, and she's a millionaire? I took back my phone and put it in my pocket. No one ever asked. No one ever really listened when I talked about my work. I wasn't hiding it. You just never cared unless it was about Beth. Beth let out a cold laugh, sharp as steel. Well, great, but now you know we're going to have a lot to talk about after this meal. As I looked around the table, from my father's tired eyes to the twitch in Mom's eyebrow, I knew dinner had only just begun. We ate in silence. The turkey grew cold on the plates, the gravy turned into a dull brown smear. No one touched the roasted sweet potatoes my mom always prided herself on making from the family recipe. Every conversation at the table had been swallowed by that $15.2 million figure that had just popped up in a random message. No one said congratulations. No one acknowledged the years I'd quietly worked alone. There was only stunned silence and plans starting to form. Of course, Beth was the first to speak. You know, she began, setting her fork down, her voice soft as mist but sharp as a knife. My daughter, Lily, has this chance to study piano at a music school in France. It's a tough spot to get, Susan, but the cost and living expenses are almost impossible to afford. If you helped, she could make her dream come true. I looked up and met her eyes. Are you asking me for money? It's not asking, Beth replied, not blinking. We're family. You have it, and I need it. Call it reasonable sharing. My dad nodded, as if that made perfect sense. My mom sipped her water, then added, You live alone. No kids, no school or daycare costs. Helping out isn't a burden, right, honey? Before I could answer, Beth's husband, Mark, spoke up. He rarely joined family talks, but not today. The truth is, Mark said, crossing his legs, you're letting money sit in an account while your sister is struggling with school fees, house payments, and daily costs. Susan, you wear used clothes, drive an old car, live in a tiny apartment. Do you really need all that money? I set my fork down. Are you saying because I live simply, I don't deserve to keep what I earned? Mark shrugged. All I'm saying is if you're not going to use it, someone else should. What about the work I put in? I asked, keeping my voice calm. All the years of research, learning, investing, taking risks. When everyone made fun of that dusty antique shop, I was working in silence. And now, just because a number showed up, everyone feels they have a right to a share? Beth lowered her tone, trying to make me feel guilty. Do you even know how much we worried about you? How many nights Mom couldn't sleep, wondering if her youngest daughter could pay for health insurance? You at least owe the family some honesty. I let out a quiet, That's rich. All these years, no one asked seriously about my work. Not once did Mom or Dad visit the shop except on opening day. Every time I mentioned a new antique, you all brushed it off. And now, suddenly, I owe you something? My mom stepped in, her voice now firmer. We're not pushing you, sweetheart. We're just suggesting that you use your good fortune to help those close to you. I looked around the table. Everyone was watching me like I was a wallet with a heartbeat. 1, 2. Then Beth spoke again, her voice soft but planned. I'm only asking for Lily. Maybe a small scholarship. You could even put your name on it. One small act could change her entire life. And after that? I asked. Then it'll be Tom. Then your house payment. Then Mom and Dad's roof. What do I become? A bank? An ATM with shared DNA? Mark sighed, showing impatience for the first time. Susan, don't be dramatic. You don't need to give it all. Just maybe $3 million. That still leaves you with $12 million to enjoy. I turned to Dad, who'd been silent the whole time. What do you think, Dad? He didn't look at me. Your mother's right. We're not forcing you. But don't forget, we all thought about helping you when you were struggling. Now it's your turn to help back. I nodded slowly, a cold, empty feeling rising in my chest. I had expected surprise. I didn't hope for applause, but at least some recognition that I had worked for it. Instead, they looked at me like a number on a spreadsheet. No one asked what I had learned. No one asked what I wanted. They calculated, divided, and called it love. I looked at the clock. It was close to 4 p.m. Pushing my chair back, "Susan," my mom called, "don't leave in the middle of dinner." I turned back, my voice low but crystal clear. I'm not leaving. I'm taking back the boundaries this family just tried to cross. And I stepped outside, no coat, letting the cool wind brush against my neck. For the first time in my life, I felt completely clear. I stood on the porch, fingers gripping the wooden railing. The November chill crept through the gaps in my gloves, but my head burned hot. Inside, the sound of spoons clinking against plates and murmurs growing louder reminded me more of a business meeting than a family dinner. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. 10 minutes later, I stepped back into the dining room. Before everyone continues dividing up my bank account, I said evenly and slowly, I need to make one thing clear. All three turned to look at me like I was some rude student daring to challenge the principal mid-speech. My money didn't come from luck. No one in this room helped me when I was starting out. No one checked in when I was hauling things at 6 a.m. or came home after 12 hours surrounded by dust and the smell of old wood. So why does anyone here think they have a say in how I spend it? Beth leaned back in her chair, arms folded. I'm not saying you didn't work hard, Susan, but if you love this family, truly love it, then sharing shouldn't be such a burden. I gave a flat smile. Sarcastic? I don't lack love. I lack mutual respect. My father put down his drink again. Your mother worried about you for years. We had no idea you were quietly saving that much. Because none of you wanted to know, I said. Every time I mentioned my work, someone changed the subject or tossed out, just hang in there a little longer. No one ever truly believed I could succeed. Mark, now pulling out his phone, maybe to take notes or crunch numbers, looked at me with a quiet, cutting tone. The issue isn't that you have money, Susan. It's that you hid it. It feels like betrayal. I nodded. If anyone in this house knows what betrayal feels like, it's me. Beth slammed her palm on the table. Enough. You can't stand there pretending to be right while you're refusing to help your own niece. I didn't flinch. Helping is when someone asks with respect. This is a demand, a guilt trip, and it's wrapped in entitlement. My mother, eyes now, crying, brimming with tears, whispered, "You're tearing this family apart over money. You live alone, no husband, no kids. What are you going to do with that much money your whole life?" That question cut through me like ice. "I'm going to live the way I want," I replied, my voice steady. "And if that embarrasses you, I'll take that burden." Beth stood, scraping her chair against the floor. My hands shook from cold and rage, but my voice didn't waver. I'm not saying no because I'm selfish. I'm saying no because I've learned the most expensive lesson of my life. Never give your worth to people who only see it when it turns into money. My father called after me. "You'll regret this. Sooner or later, being alone will catch up with you." I turned my head. I still have family, just not here. And I shut the door. I left my mother's house at dusk, my thin coat no match for the early mountain chill. My hands were freezing, but inside I felt strangely clear. No more scraping chairs, hushed whispers, or the calculating glances of my sister and her husband. No more vague words wrapped in concern. Just the sound of my own footsteps on the cobblestone sidewalk. Steady, heavy, then slowly lighter, like each stone was lifting off my shoulders. Back in Timeless Treasures, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I went upstairs to my small apartment above the shop and sat by the window. From there, I could see Maple Street as it lit up. Soft jazz drifted in from the cafe on the corner. Everything looked the same, only I had changed. I checked my phone. A text from Mom. "You hurt us, but I still love you." Beth said nothing. I wasn't waiting. I put my phone on silent, not to avoid anything, but as a reminder. The voices that matter don't come in the form of guilt or sarcasm. The next morning, I opened the store earlier than usual, not to sell anything, but to clean, to clear away every trace of what happened the day before. Being treated like a family investment made me want to put everything back in order, both in the shop and in my heart. Sarah, the college student I hired 3 months ago, came in at 8 a.m., holding a coffee and looking worried. "Are you okay? I texted you yesterday but didn't hear back." I smiled, taking the warm coffee. "Better than you'd think, and thank you for being patient." Hiring Sarah was one of the best decisions I made this year. She was 23, loved old fabrics, obsessed with tiny embroidery details, and had something I once lacked, a mentor. Now I'm the mentor. In the weeks that followed, I poured myself into the store. I started a blog series explaining how American wood furniture changed from the 1700s to the early 1900s. Website traffic shot up. Some experienced collectors even sent thank you notes. One even asked to learn from me. I hosted a talk and tea on the first Saturday of the month, inviting loyal customers, older neighbors, and a few college students. We sat among old pieces, sipped mint tea, and listened to stories about an oak mirror once owned by a nameless female painter from the Civil War era, or a set of glass cups forgotten in a Charleston cargo hold. No one at those events asked how much money I had in the bank. They asked things like, "Did this box once belong to someone famous?" Or, "How can you tell real hand-sticking from machine work?" They cared about the history, not the money. One afternoon, while packing up a ceramic piece going to California, I got an email from a small museum in Nashville. They wanted to work together on a short course about old furniture making techniques. My name was recommended by a university professor I once helped confirm the age of an old dining set for. That was the moment I realized I was no longer a shadow in Beth's family. I was my own person with a voice, an impact, and a community. On a cold December night, I locked up the store and crossed the street to the bakery, where Mrs. Elena, the 68-year-old owner, was waiting for me, as usual. We sat at the table by the window, sharing warm apple pie and cinnamon tea. She was the first to hire me to value antiques for a local event, and the first to tell me, curious, "You've got eyes that notice what others miss. Don't let anyone make you close them." I told her briefly what happened at Thanksgiving. She didn't ask for details, just said, "Blood isn't always family. Sometimes family is who you choose." I came home late that night. The wind whistled through the old window panes, but I didn't feel cold. I opened my journal and wrote a single line. "No one can cut you off from what you've built with your own hands. I need them, I have me, and the ones who truly see me." January arrived with a chill in the air and quiet, firm changes. I hung the announcement for my first class on the front window of Timeless Treasures. Antique Appraisal and Preservation course begins January 14th, maximum 8 students. Within just 3 days, the class was full. Among the registered names were a 72-year-old lady who loved French dishes, a retired high school history teacher, 2 college friends studying interior design, and even a well-known chef who wanted to open a 19th century-themed restaurant. They came from all over the state, bringing with them a curiosity and respect that deeply moved me. In the first few classes, we gathered around a beautifully carved wood table I'd recently bought from an old church. I didn't lecture like a professor. I told stories about hidden carvings on the underside of old chairs, the smell of old wood polish, and a table once called junk that turned out to be a rare piece from early American history. As I watched their attentive eyes light up at each item, I realized I wasn't just teaching. I was passing on a spark. Sarah, the young assistant I hired, now managed the entire front of the store while I taught. She handled money, displays, and had even started learning how to tell the age of historical fabrics. One Friday afternoon, right after I finished a session on old furniture, Sarah handed me a green envelope tied with a ribbon. "Open it," she said, her eyes gleaming. Inside was a hand-drawn plan for expanding into the back of the store, a preservation workshop, and a special learning space. "We could do hands-on sessions," she said, "and if you agree, I want to turn this into a small training center for young people who love this field." I sat in silence for a few moments, studying the careful drawings and notes, then looked up and smiled. "Sarah, you're dreaming big." "Because I learned from someone who dares to dream big," she replied. That evening, I called Mr. Thomas, my financial advisor. After a short talk, we agreed to take $250,000 from my investments to create the Hidden Gems Fund. This would be a yearly scholarship supporting students and independent learners who loved preserving old things, antique design, or art history. The only rule, a real-world project. By March, we received 43 applications from 11 different states. The first person to receive the scholarship was Lena Rodriguez, 27 years old, who had left school because she couldn't afford to study traditional woodworking. She had attached photos of pieces she'd fixed using old methods, along with a handwritten note. "I don't want to make money from what's new. I want to save the old so future generations can understand how their ancestors lived." When I called to share the news, Lena, crying, burst into tears. "You have no idea. You just saved me from going back to working in a convenience store." That line stayed with me for days. I hadn't saved anyone. I simply did what I once wished someone had done for me, believed in my passion when I had nothing else. By late April, the back area of the shop was changed into a multi-purpose space. We called it the Archive Room, a place for workshops, guest speakers, and changing student exhibits. Some days, people had to wait outside because it was standing room only. One evening, while putting things back on the display shelves, a visitor walked in. It was Clara, my cousin, who had skipped every family gathering for years. She now lived in a different town, teaching about nature and old building restoration at a local college. "I heard about your class through a forum," she said, smiling. "Didn't know it was you. I just wanted to say you're doing something amazing." I invited her in, brewed some mint tea, and after remembering our childhood, we talked about working together on a course that mixed preserving old things with local nature studies. I used to think my world was limited to four walls and antiques, but once I stopped waiting for my family's approval, I found myself connecting with people who truly understood the value of what I did. No certificates, no dinner parties with cold wine and empty compliments. I had the community I chose, the career I built, and a voice that no longer shook under judgment. For the first time in my life, I felt I was living right. Not because I had something to prove, but because I'd found where I truly belonged. Thanksgiving came late this year, not because of the weather. Autumn in Willow Creek still painted the trees gold, warm and dry, but because I no longer counted the days. No more anxious waiting. No more getting ready for November. No more practicing how to smile under my mother's chandelier, pretending to fit into conversations that were never mine. This year, for the first time in over 15 years, I was the one inviting. A week before the holiday, I called home. My father picked up. "I was thinking, if you two wanted, you could come to Willow Creek this year. I'll make dinner at my place, just the three of us." There was a small silence on the other end. Then my father said simply, "Your mother would like that." No apology, no emotional tremor, but also no blame. That was enough. On Thanksgiving noon, I welcomed them at the shop. My mother wore an olive green coat, her hair pinned up, lips painted a soft pink. My father had sunglasses on and a baseball cap. Standing on the front steps under the golden sun, they looked like a piece from an old childhood photo. "Your shop looks so different," my mother said as she stepped in. "It's more beautiful than we expected." I just smiled. "You've never seen it in the afternoon. The western light brings out the wood's deep colors. My father walked around, his fingers touching the edge of a mahogany table. How old is this one? Around 1815, I replied. Cuban mahogany, put together by hand. Used to belong to a shipping family here in Willow Creek. He nodded, no comment, but something in his eyes had softened. I led them upstairs to my apartment. The kitchen had been redone. Oak cabinets, vintage lights. On the table were rosemary roast chicken, mashed potatoes, homemade cranberry sauce, and pecan pie I baked that morning. Nothing fancy, but every dish was made with care. Not for them, but because I wanted to. We ate in a quiet but not tense atmosphere. My father asked about the classes. My mother shared small stories about the neighbors. No one mentioned Beth. No one brought up the $15 million or family duties. When dinner was over, I poured tea and handed over a small white-wrapped box. "A gift, Mom," I said, pushing it gently toward her. Inside was a silver brooch from the late 19th century. I had bought it at a local auction, drawn by its design, the same flower as the scholarship fund I had just started. "It's beautiful," she whispered, her hand slightly trembling. "You know, I always loved that flower, since I was little." I nodded. "You used to pin a fresh one to your blouse on parent-teacher night." "You still remember?" "I remember everything." The room fell quiet for a moment. Then my father straightened his back, set his cup down, and said slowly, "We were wrong to think you had to follow Beth's path to be successful. I thought it was safer that way." "I understand," I said, my voice calm but steady. "And I need you to understand this too. I don't need praise. I just want to be seen as enough." My mother said nothing. She just nodded so faintly I almost missed it. After I walked them out around 7 p.m., I stood on the porch watching their silver car turn the corner. No tears, no old ache, just one truth. I no longer needed them to become the parents I used to wish for. But I had chosen to speak, not stay silent. I had held my boundary, kept compassion from becoming negotiation. That night, I returned to the shop, sitting among pieces from the past, a room where time wasn't thrown away, but kept with care. I opened my notebook and wrote the final line of the day. For the first time, Thanksgiving wasn't a test. It was just a dinner between 3 people where I no longer had to ask permission to be myself. Maybe my family will never truly understand me, but from now on, they no longer have the power to define me. Susan's story reminds us that true worth doesn't come from family praise or society's approval, but from the courage to live with purpose and protect our personal boundaries. In a world that often measures success by degrees or titles, she chose a quieter, steadier path and built a meaningful life with her own hands. Sometimes we have to walk away from expected paths to find real respect, starting with self-respect.